What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. If you're thinking about moving to Metro Atlanta, one of the things you might be asking yourself is whether you want to live in the city of Atlanta or in the suburbs of Atlanta. So I've broken down this video into different categories and we'll talk about whether the city or the suburbs is best in each category. The first category that we'll talk about is the walkability of the city versus the suburbs of Atlanta. When it comes to the walkability, the city and the suburbs of Atlanta both have their pros and cons. Of course, if you're living in the city of Atlanta, everything is going to be super easy to walk to. You're not going to need a vehicle living in the city of Atlanta. There is public transportation in Marta. Marta is okay. I don't really suggest Marta. It's not awesome, but there is that option for public transportation. But really, if you're living in an area like Midtown or in Grant Park or in Buckhead, in downtown Atlanta, all of these areas make it very easy to walk to things like the grocery store or walk to a park or, whatever it is you might be doing throughout the day. Walkability within the city of Atlanta is very easy, as you could imagine. But the thing about the suburbs is that there are certain spots where walkability would be very easy. For example, if you lived within a mile of downtown Marietta, you could certainly walk to all of those shops and all of those restaurants in Marietta Square. There are also a few places you could get groceries around there as well. So walkability around Marietta Square is a good option. And then same for areas like downtown Alpharetta. If you lived within about a mile of that downtown area in the suburb of Alpharetta, again, walkability would be really high. You could certainly get around there very easily. Some other options in the suburbs for walkability would be areas like Town Center in Swanee or anywhere near the Halcyon in Cumming, Georgia. These are all great areas for living in an area where you have easy walkability to multiple things. Of course, if you're thinking about moving to Atlanta or you have any questions about what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. Thank you so much to everyone who has reached out. I'm always happy to help. This next section is about the traffic in the city and the suburbs of Metro Atlanta. When it comes to the traffic in Metro Atlanta area, you're really going to find a lot of traffic in the city of Atlanta and in the suburbs of Atlanta. The thing that you might not know, though, is that if you live in the suburbs, this is where you're going to run into the majority of traffic on the roads is the interstates from the suburbs to the city of Atlanta, as many people often live in the suburbs and work in the city of Atlanta. So those major roads and those interstates that people use to commute to and from work are the worst spots for traffic congestion during rush hour in the mornings and during rush hour in the evenings. If you live within the city of Atlanta and work within the city of Atlanta, you actually would not really have to deal with a whole lot of traffic, especially if you could walk to work. You wouldn't be dealing with traffic. But even if you had to drive to work in the city of Atlanta and you lived in the city of Atlanta, the traffic is not as bad as the interstate system going to and from the city of Atlanta. The stereotype that Atlanta has received about having terrible traffic comes from that rush hour traffic on the interstates. This is really what people are referring to when they talk about the traffic in Metro Atlanta. Okay, next, let's talk about the public school system in the city and the suburbs of Atlanta. When it comes to public schools in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta unfortunately has some of the worst public schools, and it's the suburbs that have the much better public school system. The people and the families who are wanting to live in an area with excellent public school districts tend to move to the suburbs of Atlanta. Areas like Marietta or Alpharetta, or especially Suwanee, and Duluth. These all have excellent public school systems, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. But unfortunately, the city of Atlanta has public school systems that are rated more like a 4 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. Very oftentimes, the families who live within the city of Atlanta send their kids to private school because the public schools are so bad within the city of Atlanta. So if living in an area that has excellent public school system is important to you, you really want to consider the suburbs of Atlanta. Next, let's talk about the jobs in Metro Atlanta. You might think that the city of Atlanta is a much better option for finding work, but the fact is that the city of Atlanta has 500,000 people, and the suburb with the closest population to that is probably Sandy Springs with just under 100,000. So there is really a lot more competition for work in the city of Atlanta than there is in the suburbs of Atlanta. Even though there are definitely more employers within the city of Atlanta, there's a lot more people in the city of Atlanta. So really, you don't want to discount the suburbs, especially areas like Alpharetta that has a huge tech industry throughout the city, or areas like Cobb County or Marietta, which have a very big industrial sector. There really is lots of employment in the suburbs of Atlanta, and there's not nearly as much competition. So both have their pros and cons. So both the suburbs of Atlanta and the city of Atlanta are about equal when it comes to finding jobs. Next, let's talk about whether the suburbs or the city of Atlanta is a more family-friendly area. Now, this really depends on your definition of family-friendly. If your family likes to be super close to, the schools and the grocery stores, and you want to be able to walk to all of these different areas and have everything super close to you so that you don't need a vehicle, then maybe an area like Midtown or Piedmont Park would be a great area for your family. But most families who live in the Metro Atlanta area live in the suburbs. As you can imagine, this is where the better schools are. This is where there's less crime. So the family-friendly area is really the suburbs. Again, cities like Marietta, Woodstock, Roswell, Beaufort, Georgia, these are all very family-friendly suburbs and are certainly the more popular section for families to live in. But when it comes to finding things to do and finding exciting activities, certainly the city of Atlanta is the better place for that. You're going to find many tourist attractions in the city of Atlanta. You're going to find things like the zoo, the aquarium, the Coca-Cola Museum, the College Football Hall of Fame. Piedmont Park is a great place to spend time. There are really so many things to do within the city of Atlanta. There's no question that the city is going to be more exciting and more adventurous than the suburbs. And then also, public transportation is going to be much easier in the city of Atlanta than in the suburbs. But again, the public transportation in Atlanta is not great. I'm certainly not recommending it. Something like Uber or Lyft would probably be a much better option than using the MARTA train system in Atlanta. But there is no public transportation in the suburbs of Atlanta. Cobb County does have a small public transportation system, but as for the rest of the Metro Atlanta area and the suburbs around Atlanta, they don't really have any kind of public transportation. So you certainly would need a vehicle living in the suburbs, but you could get away with not having a vehicle in the city of Atlanta. Let's talk about some of my favorite parts of the city of Atlanta to live in, and then we'll also talk about some of my favorite suburbs to live in. When it comes to living in the city of Atlanta, Grant Park is a great area and one that I definitely recommend. Grant Park is one of my favorite parts of the city of Atlanta to live in. Average home values around Grant Park are right around 500 to 600,000, and there really is so many things to do around that area. It's certainly a safe area as well and puts you right there in the middle of all of the action in Atlanta. Also, Midtown is a great option for living in the city of Atlanta. Midtown is one of the best parts of Atlanta to live in. If you're wanting to live in an area that puts you right in the middle of Atlanta and all of the action that comes with living in the city, then Midtown is a great option. And then some of my favorite suburbs of Metro Atlanta are Marietta, which has Marietta Square. That's the downtown part of Marietta. The schools there are excellent. The home values are very good. Alpharetta is certainly one of the best suburbs of Metro Atlanta, and they have one of the best downtown areas. And then the city of Suwanee is another great suburb of Metro Atlanta, and is certainly one of the most popular suburbs. If you want to know more about the city of Suwanee, check out this video where I talk all about Suwanee, Georgia. I'll see you there.